Hello there. This is a recap for session 23, Castles and Crusades campaign. For this session, I had 3 players. We had Spraul Earthshade, Dwarven Cleric of Throster, the Dwarven Brewing God, and Rhonin, who's a young fighter, archer, who fled his family farm for a life of adventure. And introducing a new character, Cosmo. Cosmo is a halfling. He hails from a village called Moss Haven, which is about a week's walk to the south of Arden. And this character was played by my friend Chris, who also plays Orvon, but he wasn't really too happy with Orvon. The knight class just wasn't clicking for him. I think it's a good class. I just think it's a little more niche. And there could be circumstances where the knight would be very handy. The inspiration ability and stuff was really interesting. But he wanted to try something different, so he made Cosmo as halfling rogue. So the session started off with Cosmo, and he's traveling north, and he's coming from his hometown of Moss Haven. And the reason he's traveling north is because his brother, despite Cosmo's slight nefarious background, his brother was the sheriff of Moss Haven, and he was recently murdered in a grisly, ritualistic fashion where he was murdered, his face was cut off, and this symbol was painted on the wall where he was murdered in his brother's blood. So he's taken upon himself to hunt down whoever this killer is. In his travels north, he came across, he learned of a remote farm where that same thing had happened. And continues north, and this brings us into the session. He comes upon another farm. It's about within an hour's walk of the town. And it is a familiar farm to members of the rest of the party. It is the farm of Adric Brune, who some of them rescued from the Ungren, who were trying to sacrifice him, and they ended up killing both his sons in the process. And as it appears now, Adric's wife, Elsa, has been murdered in the same fashion as this farmer and Cosmo's brother. This also is drawing quite a commotion. There isn't a lot of murders in Arden. I mean, it's a town of 5,000 people. Obviously, there's some things going on that the adventurers get involved in, but like outright murders are very rare. So this is drawing a crowd. Chieftain Mormac is there, and this draws the attention of Spraul and Rhonin. And Rhonin in particular, because coming from the farm, he knew these people growing up. They were friends of his family. And after they had rescued him, Rhonin had gone and visited him, gave the family money, helped them a little bit to try to keep the farm going, because he knew it was going to be tough for them, losing both their sons. And now they found out that Elsa Brune has been murdered. They speak briefly. They see the chieftain with Adric and trying to console him. And they go over to also offer their condolences. And Cosmo just he doesn't know any of these people, but he just kind of uses a little bit of stealth and tags along. And being small, like a halfling, he goes unnoticed for a bit. And through their conversations, the chieftain wants them to look into this because he knows that they've had run-ins with the cultists before, Spraul and Rhonin. So they all go inside with Cosmo trailing along inside the farmhouse. It's a grisly scene. It's been ransacked. Elsa's laying there on the floor with a blanket over her, and they search the area a little bit. They find the symbol, and they know it to be this symbol of Meldeth, who's a demon lord from the abyss. And they've run into this cult before. The Ungren worship Meldeth, and the cultists that they dealt with in town were worshippers of Meldeth. Cosmo reveals himself and with his information, with his brother and this other farmer that was slain in a similar fashion. So they they search the farmhouse for clues, and one Spraul finds clutched in Elsa's hand a piece of scarlet red cloth. That's one of the main clues they find. Just looking through my notes here. They search, and that's about all they find. You know, the whole place has been ransacked. They decide to bring Adric to the Rhonin's family farm so he can stay there, because he can't stay here. Spraul actually considers like taking all of Adric's belongings that he might need out and then just torching the place because it's in such, you know, because of the crime scene. But they don't do that. They do take Adric to the farm, and they're actually on their way there. They're about halfway there. They meet Rhonin's family, who had heard of what had happened and was on their way. So they escort, for safety reasons, the whole Rhonin's family and Adric back to the family farm where he's put up. And before they leave, Rhonin's father speaks with him, because Rhonin left the farm like abruptly, like it wasn't a prearranged thing. He just grabbed his stuff and left. So there's been a little bit of tension in the past when they've interacted, and Rhonin's father tells him that he's, you know, has heard good things that he's been doing with his new companions, and wishes him well and safety, but also tells him to take care of this, because this is not, obviously not a good thing. This is evil, and somebody needs to take care of it. So the three, Cosmo, Rhonin, and Spraul, returned to Arden, and in the midst of all that, there was a lot of good role play with Cosmo and Spraul and Rhonin, and then kind of getting to know each other, and they're kind of thrown together by happenstance. But based on his knowledge, like, Cosmo is welcomed in with him, like, yeah, we could use your help. The first thing they do, so with this, it was like a mystery. So I've been kind of busy lately with the painting commission, so I didn't have a lot of time to lay out like all the clues. I had the piece of fabric that they found, and so I was kind of like, my plan was to just play off what they did, and I did, and it worked out very well. I didn't really have a plan for them to get to the end goal, which you see on the camera, which we'll get into in a bit. I kind of threw it back on them. So what they did was, in a previous session, Barry and Lork dealt with cultists on their own, and they found a hideout, like an old abandoned warehouse. So these guys, they decided to go there and start their search there. Their premise was, it was kind of amusing, because in that session where Barry and Lork dealt with those cultists, they were also intoxicated because they've been drinking all night. And so they're like, well, maybe they missed something. So they go to the warehouse. They find the room where there's only two rooms in this warehouse. So the main room, which was empty, and then there's a smaller room, and that's where they found a little shrine. Barry and Lork did, and a chest with some treasure in it, and the note that had marked all the party members for death. So they searched that small room, more thoroughly than inebriated Lork and Barry did, and they find a concealed hatch in the floor, in the wooden floor. So they get that open, and they see it reveals a tunnel going down with a ladder. It goes down about 40 feet or so. So they decide to follow it. Now, this was all improv. This is not how I planned for them. I didn't really have, like I said, a solid plan for how they were going to find this. I kind of just left it up to them and just kind of rolled with what they did, and it worked out really well. So they find this tunnel, and they start to follow it. And Spraul, being a dwarf, he knows like their depth underground, their direction, all that stuff. Realizes these tunnels are not dwarven make. They're dirt and shored up with post and plank. And so they follow him with Cosmo in the lead. He's stealthy, so he's leading the way. And as they go along, they find a little alcove, and with another ladder going up. So he goes up and checks that out, and it leads into an abandoned house. So they're like, oh, that's it. But it doesn't look like it's been used in quite a while. So they don't search the house. They go back. He goes back down, keeps going on through the tunnel. They know, based on Spraul's knowledge, that they're headed north, and they're in like an older area of town, and nearing what would be the wall of that surrounds the town, the stockade wall. Excuse me. The tunnel wise, and they checked the one off to the right. Actually, I don't know if they did that first or not. And it continues on. They end up checking the tunnel to the right, and they find another, like a door, and it wasn't locked. It was capable of being barred, but not barred. And Cosmo checks it, finds a trap, and in the trap is a poison arrow trap. He disables that, and they open the door, and it opens to the outside. They realize they're on the outside of the walls of Arden. So they close that back up, head back down, keep going down the tunnel, and they start to get into this area over here. And they see light coming from there, and as Cosmo stealths ahead, and they see a single man, and he's a guard. And he can hear like boisterous talk and stuff coming from beyond, but he can't make out what they're saying. So they end up coming up with a plan where they lure that guard down. Cosmo wings a sling bullet down there, a sling stone, and it draws his attention down. When he gets closer, they attack him, and they dispatch him, and they do so before he can warn anybody. And then they proceed up this way to this area here. And Rhonin kind of takes the lead. He picks up the guard's lantern and goes up and pokes his head in, and he sees 4 guys sitting around a table drinking and playing cards. So one of them spots him, the rest don't. And there's a little, I don't know if we rolled initiative for that or if it was a surprise. I think we rolled initiative. And Rhonin throws a flask of oil and the lantern and hitting the table and igniting it. And we use this little fire elemental to show that, which surprised the people sitting around the table. And one of them went ass over tea kettle to get away from the flames, and the rest burst up, and battle ensues. They have a pretty close, tight fight here in this entranceway. I think everybody except Cosmo Cosmo took damage in the tunnel. Like, I think he got hit with at least one crossbow bolt in the fight with the first guard. But they have this fight here. Cosmo doesn't take any damage there. He has like crossbow bolts winging by him all the time, hitting by his head, but he never gets hit. Rhonin and Spraul definitely hit a bunch of times, but eventually they beat down these cultists and they capture one of them. They try to capture another one. Initially, Spraul hit one that was here with a hold person that was successful, so that helped with the battle. It thinned down for a few rounds how many people they had to fight, and which was good. That was a really good use of that spell. And it wore off. They ended up killing, but they ended up subduing one of the guys. He doesn't give them a lot of information. They realize, like, when the last guy refused to surrender, he was a fanatic, and Spraul ended up knocking him out. They tie him up, and they proceed further. So they search this area a little bit. It's like a living quarters with a set of stairs here. They go up the stairs, and it comes up here. There's a hatch here at the top of the stairs. They pop that. They come in here. They do find some treasure and stuff in here in this chest. I think it was four bags of coin. There was a bag full of copper, a bag full of silver, and 2 bags of gold. They come up here in this room, and there's another chest in here. There's nobody in here. There's a bed and a chest. They open up that chest. They find 2 more bags, and it has gold. But the chest also has a bunch of red robes and black robes, and all the robes have the symbol of Meldeth on it. So they come out in here and they realize they're in an old abandoned house, and there's like a window here and a door here, but it is all boarded up really solid. The house is abandoned and slightly dilapidated. So there's a doorway here. They go up and check that. There's a stairway up this way, and they can hear coming from up there. There's a little bit of light. They can tell it's like candlelight, and it has this like sickly incense smelling smell to it in the air, and they hear chanting. So when they come up around and the stairs come out here, they see this altar and this woman on it. And the woman is recognizable to at least Spraul. And way back when, one of the early first couple sessions where they first dealt with the cult of Meldeth, it was an adventure that had Spraul, his brother Agrax, and Barry. They were approached by a member of the Church of Cosmo, which is a big church, largely worshipped in Arden, in this region, by this woman named Tristana, and she was looking for the head of their order, a man named Brogan, and he was missing, and he was at the temple, but he was supposed to be in town conducting a ceremony, and so the party went to look for him. They found him being just about to be sacrificed by cultists of Meldeth. So they've met this Tristana before, and she is standing on this altar. And at the base of this altar, on this black stone, with all these runes etched into it, are 3 faces. And she's chanting. And she sees the party coming up the stairs, and she looks at them, smiles, finishes her chant, and these puffs of like smoke appear, and 4 dretches are summoned. These demons are summoned into the room. And I didn't tell the party they were dretches. Spraul had faced them before, but Matt, he didn't really remember them. So, and those miniatures are kind of horrific looking, so they're really good. So they were like, oh boy, we're in trouble. So they actually retreat. They smartly start to retreat out of this room. Before they do, because the Tristana and the dretches won initiative, she goes again, and she starts to shimmer and change, and her robe drops, and she is changed into this very large vulture, and she flies out through the ceiling, a hole in the ceiling which I had described previously, and disappears, leaving them to fight the dretches. So they wisely, this is where some good tactics came in, they retreat down the stairs with Spraul holding at the landing, Rhonin down further, and Cosmo, not having much room to do anything, he retreats to the front door. And he had previously, when they were prying up the hatch in the old warehouse, he has a small crowbar, which we jokingly called a cat's paw because he's a halfling, so it's a really small crowbar. But he had used it effectively earlier, so he starts working on the door. And there's the way I told it to Chris, the player of Cosmo, that there was 3 boards that secured the door. So he had to get those 3 boards off, and then the door could be open. So he's working on that the entire time. There's a fixed battle here where, like I said, Spraul's holding the stairs. Rhonin ends up retreating down here so he can use his bow, but this is all open, so some of the dretches were able to get down. So it went back and forth between a range fight for Rhonin to a melee fight and back and forth. Eventually, after taking some wounds, I rolled, my rolls were completely horrible. And then when I did hit, my damage rolls were garbage. I got maybe a couple good hits on them, but I guess some new additions to the dice jail, because I had damage dice, it just would not stop rolling ones, so they've been jailed. But they all survive the fight, and they defeat the 4 dretches. They still have the prisoner, which they dragged along, and he was down here. They didn't drag him up the stairs. So he's been remanded into custody back in Arden. And that was kind of where the session ended. We actually went a little long. The guys hung in there, which was good. I appreciate it. Just trying to think if there's any other things of note. I'm sure I probably missed something. But that was pretty much the gist of the adventure. It was a real good session. I wanted to do it because we're actually playing, we're supposedly getting a hurricane here tomorrow, but hopefully not. And if not, we're going to play again. And I wanted to get Chris's new character introduced, and this was the session to do it. And it was also a big reveal, because the cult has been something they've been dealing with on the side. It's been a threat that they've had to, that's in the back of their head that they have to take care of. And now they know who the ringleader in town is, and it's one of their, supposedly, this woman, Tristana, was the number 2 person in that temple of Cosmo. So and she in fact has been a worshiper of Meldeth the whole time. So they don't know where she's gone. She fled in the form of a vulture, which kind of, I think, surprised the players a little bit. So they might see her again at some point. But yeah, that was the adventure. Real quick setup, pretty easy for this session. And it was a good time. It was good to be, it felt like we hadn't played in a while, so it was good to be back at the table. And if you have any questions, comments, look forward to them. And thanks for watching.